sort of inherited her mother's social, emotional instability and erratic behaviors. Little foreshadowing for the future, just so you know. So, her mother was sort of re-triggered, I'm sure, after her husband's death. When they moved away, she was obviously still distraught, but apparently Barbara, too, had suffered quite a bit. Throughout her childhood years, she had suffered through quite a number of severe mental health issues. There really isn't much details on it. They're quite vague on exactly what that means, other than that Barbara would have offensive outbursts towards others. Over time, had been very emotionally unstable, would have huge temper tantrums and like emotional crying bouts, and over time she had tried to commit suicide multiple times. So there's no real solid information. There was some people claiming she probably was bipolar or schizophrenic, but this was a time when mental health was really avoided in the conversation. There was a huge stigma behind it. So it's really hard to get any information like that in this case. But she was a lady climbing up that ladder into society, and she started getting a little angry towards people, but not too much at this point. She kind of tried to keep that part of her hidden for a little bit, at least. Especially because she was just getting started. She just started modeling, and she really wanted to grow her career, and her dream job was to become an actress. But soon she was flown into Hollywood for a screen test for a movie. Things were starting to move a little bit for her. She did not get the role, however, but she did become friends with a fellow aspiring actress named Cornelia Baekeland. So Cornelia, an aspiring actress, became best friends with Barbara. They went out together, they would go to dinners, events, and Cornelia had ended up introducing Barbara to her brother, Brooks Baekeland. Brooks was on the Royal Canadian Air Force as a trainee pilot. Good job. But that's not really what pulled Barbara to Brooks. It was that she found out somehow that he was from a very rich family, like old money rich. Their family, their grandfather, actually was a known chemist who had created Velox photogenic paper. Yeah, which basically is the fiber that pictures were printed on. And over time, he had ended up creating plastic. So think about how much we use it. Big money. Creator created it. They're rich. And Barbara was like, I'm interested. So Barbara and Brooks started hitting things off, but it was not love at first sight. Things did not run smoothly. But Barbara was a gold digger and was like, I'm gonna make this work however I can. And apparently because he seems like just a really good guy. Fun fact, on their certificate, I assume this is where this was written, but when they got married, they had written that Brooks was a writer and she was a painter. Just some weird lies that I thought was interesting. So Brooke finds out it's a lie. Barbara's hanging out, part of his family now. She's all happy. And honestly, it reminds me at the beginning of this story, at least that part of the movie Hide and Seek or whatever that new one is. Adam Brody's wife. Kind of reminds me of that. That was actually a good movie. Anyway, so despite the lies, the two lived together in an apartment in the Upper East Side of New York. They had big parties, loved to entertain guests, live that rich life, have dinners, entertain, and guests joined them such as Greta Garbo, Tennessee Williams, a bunch of fancy people that I'm not fancy enough to know who they were, so I didn't write their names down. But as time moved along, Barbara started to get well known amongst her social groups for being unstable, incredibly rude, and she would have severe bouts of depression, drank very, very heavily, and people were kind of like, you know what, this relationship's a bit much because she was just rude. And she was actually seeing a psychologist, low-key, but of course she would never be able to really confide in anyone about that, or just be able to talk, because it was so, you just didn't talk about it, right? That wasn't helping. She couldn't talk to anybody, and her relationship with Brooks was not great. Surprising? No. The two would actually frequently have affairs. He would sleep around like a lot, but so would she. She had no shame in her game, but they must have had some sort of connection, because the two did end up actually having that child she said was coming. And she'd ended up giving birth to her son, Anthony, or Tony Baekeland, in August of 1946. So the two have a baby. Barbara's erratic, rude to their friends, and Brooke really wasn't having a lot of her. They trekked on. From the summer of 1954 onward, Anthony, aged 8, and his family led a nomadic seasonal also don't know who phoned the police, if it was him or a neighbor below, but that wasn't really discussed. Now, at some point or another, he had actually confessed to the murder, basically telling the police that he had snapped over all of the abuse he was put through and that he was just over it. He had underwent then intensive treatments at a high security hospital where he was released on July 21st in 1980. A little over 10 years that he was there, but he obviously had a very influential group of friends and family whom were helping to get him released, but it was not the best idea. He'd moved to New York after being locked away and was then living with his 87-year-old grandmother, Nini. And it was only 6 days after his release that he had attacked her with a kitchen knife, the same way that he had his own mother. He had actually stabbed Nini 8 times, breaking several bones, but apparently she survived, and he was then arrested again. He was charged for attempted murder and was sent to Rikers Island prison. After 8 months of assessment, the psychiatric team said that he was expected to be released on bail at a court hearing on March 20th in 1981. I don't know why they would allow that though, or who would think that was okay, but okay. But this case was adjourned by the judge due to the delay in transferring his medical records from the United Kingdom. So when that had happened, Anthony had returned to his cell after the hearing around 3:30 p.m. March 20th, and he was found